Hi, my name is Heather, and this is my testimony. The earliest childhood memory that I have was of my mom and her boyfriend coming to visit me in a children's home because my brother and I had been taken away from her again. Any other memory before that was something that maybe my brother or my mother told me about, but it wasn't of my own recollection. I might have seen it in pictures and asked them about it, and they told me maybe some of those memories, but I don't remember them firsthand. After the children's home, I do remember some good years spent with my stepdad that stayed with my mom and got her clean. And I had a few good childhood years growing up with him and her together. Although it was a recipe for a disaster in the very beginning because they had met in AA and they were both drug addicts and alcoholics, and they were trying to do their best to raise a family, but without God, that wasn't something that they did very well. Anyway, after several years of being together, my stepdad died, and he left a big hole in my mom's heart. Instead of her staying clean and sober like she had been for so long, she decided that she was going to go back to the drugs and alcohol. And that's where the more bad memories came from. I was told when I was little, before all of that happened, that, my mom would be so strung out on drugs or drunk that my brother would have to go and get us something to eat so that we wouldn't starve, or, she would have a different man over every night, or about how my real father had abused me, and all of this before I was 4 years old. And then we had this man come into our lives who became my stepdad and tried to be a father figure, but like I said, it was a recipe for disaster in the very beginning. And when he died, it was very easy for us to go back to the life that we'd known before him. And so my brother ran away, and I tried to stay home with my mom and take care of her because she was on a downward spiral. She did work 3 jobs to try to support us because when my stepdad was alive, he made a lot of money as a tax accountant and was able to give us our basic and some even our less basic needs, things that we wanted. But when he died and he took all the money that she had out of the account and spent it before he died, then she was left to have to take care of us for herself. So she worked 3 jobs and she was never home. And like I said, I did my best to try to take care of her and try to take care of myself. I thought that maybe by doing good in school that, I would get her acceptance and her attention, and I wouldn't get any kind of negative attention from her, that I would be the good one and she wouldn't have to worry about me. But with her being away so much, it was a lot of time that I had to myself to do whatever I wanted to do. And, during the week she'd go to work, but then on the weekends she'd come back and she would party, and those parties would be at our house. And she thought, maybe she was the cool mom because I was able to be at home with her and she could see everything that I was doing, even if it was drinking in front of her or flirting with guys that she had over. She thought that as long as she could watch me do those things, that she had it under control. And anyway, she tried to be more of my friend, and I took advantage of that. Eventually having the parties with her wasn't enough. I had to have the parties when she was gone and not home. And I stopped going to school like I had been going to, and I would stay away from the house and spend time with my friends, none of them good friends either. And I would hang out with the guys that she had over during the weekend, by myself, alone. And these were all older men because they were men her age. And I thought that, I was cooler because I got to hang out with these older people. And anyway, it put me in a very bad situation. And one thing led to another. And of course, I followed this guy that I knew, one of those older guys. And he told me that, if I would leave home, that he would take care of me, that, we would have this fantastic life together, that, he could do such a better job than my mom ever did raising me, and that he'd give me the life that I'd always wanted. And I was young and I believed him. And he told me, one day to meet him, at the beach. And, we would just run off, I guess, into the sunset together. That's how dumb I was. I thought, this was going to be the start of my brand new life. And how naive I was to think that. I guess I was just looking for a father figure. And because he was older, he was it. But I thought I was in love. And you can't really tell a young girl who thinks she's in love that she's not, because she will just rebel against you. And that's what I did. And so anyway, I took him up on his offer. I went to go meet him down at the beach, and I waited for like hours. And I was down there, and I called him, and he didn't answer. And I was like, where are you? It's about to be past my curfew. Even though my mom pretty well let me do whatever I wanted to, I still had to be back home at a certain time. And I knew I was fixing to get in some big trouble if this man didn't come through for me, because my only other option was to go back home. And that wasn't a great option because, I told you that earlier my brother had ran away. Well, he used to be the butt of all of her abuse before I grew up. And then when he ran away, it was just me left. So I had to take a lot of that abuse, and I wasn't trying to go back home and have to suffer the consequences of being out past my curfew, of hanging out with this older guy on my own, of not going to school, the things that I knew that I was supposed to be doing. And so I tried to call him, and hours went by and hours, and then now it's starting to become nighttime, and I realized something. I realized that, everything he told me was a lie. He wasn't coming to rescue me. We weren't going to go right off into the sunset, and I had a choice to make. And I'd used all my money for the bus to get down there to the beach, and I didn't have a way back home. So the only thing I could do is to call my mom and tell her what I'd done, which was not an option for me, or I could stay right where I was at. So that's what I decided to do. I decided to stay there on the beach. And like I said, it had gotten dark by now, and I walked up and down the boardwalk. This was Venice Beach, so there was plenty of shops during the day, but at night it sort of becomes more of an entertainment place to be. And so I hung out on the boardwalk, and I saw this drum circle that was over there, and a bunch of people that looked like that they were having fun. And since I was alone, I thought, that's not a good idea to be alone at night. I knew that much. And so I went to go hang out with these people, and asked them, can I just be with y'all? I came down here, and the person that was going to meet me didn't come. So, can I just hang out with y'all? And they were passing around the drugs and the alcohol, and, I was trying to fit in. So I took the drugs and the alcohol, and, we spent the night out there partying. And then when everybody started to go back home, because a lot of people lived, on apartments off the beach, or even some of them were homeless people that lived there on the beach, I started to see fewer number of people there. And at this point, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to find a place to stay. And I was sort of already out of my mind, and from the drugs and the alcohol that I'd done. So anyway, my next memory was waking up next to some strange man the next morning, and feeling the worst that I'd ever felt in my entire life. I didn't know where I was. I was so scared. But once again, I didn't feel like I could go home. So I gathered up the things that I did have with me, and I left that guy, and I started walking down the boardwalk, and found another group of people to hang out with for the rest of the day. And one night would turn into one day, would turn into 4 years that I spent there on the street. And I know maybe some of you don't understand that, why I couldn't go home, but I was afraid of my mom. I did not have the best childhood, like I said, and I knew that there would be some serious consequences when I got back, and it wouldn't be like I would be grounded. I mean, I was afraid this woman would kill me if I went back home and told her what I'd done. So I didn't go back, and I stayed out there on the streets. And I guess I could tell you that some of the lowest points that I had, you know, I don't want to go into everything, but I had more of those first nights over and over and over again. I went for days, you know, without eating or sleeping. And you say, how's that possible? Well, first of all, when you're on drugs, you're not considering what you're going to have to eat for the next day. Second of all, when you live on the streets, you don't have any money to worry about what you're going to eat for the next day. And so I just walked up and down the boardwalk all day begging for change. Some people would be nice and give me food. Some people, you know, would tell me that I needed to go back home. You know, there were some churches around that offered, you know, a sack lunch on certain days, so I knew where to sort of get those. I had a group of people that I hung around with, and none of them good either. A lot of them with the same stories from abusive homes, teenagers, runaways, even older people. There was a man that, you know, had left the military on bad terms. There was, I mean, people from all walks of life. There was businessmen that would come out there to hang out with people on the beach. There's all these different kinds of people that I hung out with. So, like I said, I went sometimes days without eating or sleeping and just walking up and down the boardwalk. I didn't even know sometimes where I was. And another low point, I saw one of my friends that I hung out with kill herself. She OD'd on heroin. That's overdosed, for those that don't know. And that was pretty traumatic. I saw a man get killed, and you know, it was by the grace of God and his safety and his will for my life that, you know, I didn't end up like any one of those people. But still yet, there were a lot of things that I went through while I was on the streets that made me sort of have to toughen up. And I went from being a young child to a teenager to someone that just had to survive from day to day. So eventually I would end up in Mexico. I went with a group of people to go to Mexico to go hang out there. And coming back over the border, I got arrested. And that was probably one of the best things that happened to me, because I ended up going to a drug rehab, and I was still underage. So when I got there, you know, they called my mom. And, you know, the thing about that was when she finally came down to see me at the drug rehab, after she'd gotten over being angry and hurt, and blaming herself even, she did not react the way that I thought that she would. She was still my mom. She was worried about me. She was so glad to see that I was alive. She hated the fact that I didn't feel like I could come and turn to her. And so over the next year, we tried to rebuild our relationship. And while I was in the drug rehab, and when I got out, I wanted to go back home with her because that's the only home that I'd known. But unfortunately, she was still so unstable, and she lost the place that she had to live. I remember us coming back to her apartment one day and all of our stuff on the side of the road. And, you know, she took it in stride and said, well, let's just get a shopping cart, pick up what we can, and, you know, we'll try to figure something out. Now, some of you are like, okay, I know that you had a way to support yourselves, you know, but that wasn't the case. She was a felon from her past, and so she didn't get like the food stamps. You know, she might have gotten some child support from my brother's dad, but, you know, that was all spent on her habits. And then when she didn't have a job because she couldn't keep up with her habits, she lost the apartment, so we didn't get any kind of government help. So, I mean, when I say that we were kicked out on the streets, I don't mean like we collected welfare, and we were able to just go and get food stamps and WIC or whatever else, that stuff wasn't available to us. So we were out there to fend for ourselves. And so one week we had a shopping cart. The next week we didn't even have the shopping cart. And, we would stand out of liquor stores and gas stations and ask for money. And people, once again, they would either be kind or rude, but that's how we got by. And this went on for a couple of months. And that's when I met my oldest daughter, Michaela's dad. And he came by and offered me a place to stay. And it was a one-way street. It wasn't for my mom and I, it was for me. And, here I was again, still looking for that father figure. And I took him up on his offer and I said, okay, yeah, great, sure. Get me out of this situation. And, my mom assured me she was going to be okay. She'd find a way. She eventually did find an apartment of her own. But anyway, I moved in with this guy, didn't know him from Adam. And I tried to get some of my school finished because this was during my high school years. So I only had 1 year before I was supposed to be graduating. So I tried to continue to go to school to get my life back on track. He wasn't the best guy for me, but, at the time it did get me off the streets, did get me back to school. And that's when I joined the JROTC and was starting to think about going into the military. And I was at 17 at this time, and I talked to my mom about it, and I said, the only way that I ever see me getting out of this situation is to get away from this place because I don't ever see my life going to get anything better than what it is now. And she did the second best thing that she could have possibly done for me and signed a waiver so that I could go into the military early. And Michaela's dad wasn't very happy about it. At this time, I wasn't pregnant. And I told him, I'm going to join the military. Will you stick by me? And, somehow I still thought in my head that this was going to be something that worked, and maybe we would even get married and, my life would finally get on the right track. Well, whenever I went to basic training, he came and saw me after the graduation. And he told me, he didn't see how it was going to work long distance because when you join the military, you end up going to get stationed somewhere not always your choosing, and it was probably not going to be in California where I'm from. And he said, we're probably just going to have to part ways, so I went to my first station and I started working my job in the military and still tried to talk to him back and forth. And it was about 3 months after I got there that I found out that I was pregnant. And so here again, I thought, I'm going to call him and he's going to change his mind and he's going to do this long distance thing with me. But that wasn't the case. I found out I was pregnant with twins and I told him and he said, I don't know what you want me to do about it. And I told you we were going to have to separate and go our separate ways. And, maybe we could try to make something work, but you're going to have an abortion because I don't want any more kids. I've already got 3 kids. He had 3 daughters. And he didn't want to have to deal with more kids. And, of course I was heartbroken, but I think I had enough fear of God, even though I didn't know God yet, to know that I wasn't going to have an abortion. I knew that was wrong. And I was going to have to leave this man and just raise these kids on my own. And so, anyway, we parted ways, and it was around that time I met my coworker, and she, would keep witnessing to me about God and telling me, you need to come to our church, and, your life, it'll get so much better if you just come visit our church. And I just, to get her to be quiet, I finally said, okay, I'll go, but anyway, I promised her off and on, and then I'd break my promise and I wouldn't go. Well, in the meantime, I miscarried one of the twins, and that was really hard for me. And so I pushed her away even more, and but she was persistent and she kept saying, I'm telling you, you're going to see when you come to church, God can change your life around. And I didn't have any church background besides when my mom would drop us off when we were little to maybe get a babysitter from the church, or when she went for a special occasion with my stepdad, because it was Christmas or Easter or something we were supposed to go to church for. So church to me didn't seem like it was going to be the answer, because I'd been exposed to a little bit of that, or she even told me when she grew up that she had people that raised her who went to church. But anyway, she didn't have anything great to say about her childhood where that was concerned. So church to me was not my answer. But like I said, this coworker of mine, she was persistent, and she kept saying, you just come to church and you'll see. So like I finally went to church. And that first time I thought, these people are crazy, and I don't know how coming here is going to make my life any better. And because I worked with her every day, she had the chance to talk to me every day and minister to me. And, she'd give me scriptures and she'd pray for me. And she'd keep inviting me back to church, and she'd invite me over to her house. And so, little did I know it, that God was going to finally show up in a real big way for me one day when I was attending church services. And I honestly don't even remember what the message was, but I remember sitting there being so broken and so tired, and having been left by just everybody that I thought loved me that didn't, and never finding that kind of love that I was looking for. And I remember God just really telling me that, hey, you know what? I love you, and I'm not going to leave you, but you need to repent of your sins and turn from them. You need to trust me and what I've done for you. And I loved you so much that I died on Calvary to save you. And I remember sitting there just so brokenhearted, and I stood up during the invitation, and I don't know what they were talking about. And I went up there to the altar and I said a prayer, but thankfully several of the ladies came up to me and they said, you know what, do you want to go back to the office and pray with us, or have us pray with you, or, explain this better to you? And, because I had went up there because I wanted to get saved. And, I said, yes, please. And so we went back into the office, and several of them gathered around me, and we started praying. And it was at that moment that I saw everything that I'd ever done wrong. It was like my sins had nailed Jesus to the cross, and I saw my life just flash before my eyes. It wasn't like a life or death situation, in reality, but it was to me. It felt that way to me. And it was like I had a choice. And it was at that moment I trusted God as my Savior. And I just felt this huge burden lifted away from me. And it wasn't necessarily just the feeling, but I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that, my life as I knew it was going to change, and God was going to do the changing. And so anyway, from there, I spent a lot of time going to church, and I did what most people do, and I tried everything the preacher said. I tried to make it work for me, and I was like, okay, we shouldn't do this, and this is the way we should live. And I tried to do it. But anyway, because I was trying to do it, I still felt like I was missing something. I knew I'd been saved, but I felt like I was missing something still in my life. And I was a single parent. By now I had my oldest daughter, Michaela, and, I was trying to get by, and I still felt like I needed someone physically there for me. Yes, God was there for me, and he should have been all that I needed, but I did not, I guess, put my faith and trust in him where he could fulfill all of my needs were concerned. I did for salvation, but I tried to still take care of my own needs. And, like I said, I wanted someone physically there to love me. And I thought that was what I was missing. And, so anyway, I still tried to find different guys, not necessarily in the partying scene, but different guys that might go to church with me that, I could, I guess, make be this happily ever after kind of story for me. But that's when I met my husband, and he had came into my work, and he needed something because we were both in the military. And anyway, he had invited me to come to his house, and I wish I could say that it was love at first sight and he started going to church and everything was just great, but that necessarily wasn't the case. I didn't start dating him right away. I actually dated his roommate first. And anyway, I moved in with them, and like I said, I wasn't really living how God wanted me to live. I was out of God's will. I was saved, but I was out of God's will, and still not getting the blessings of God, and still feeling like my life was empty. I would eventually marry my husband, and we'd only known each other for 3 months, because like I said, I was trying to find someone to fit that fairy tale story that I had in my head that just didn't exist, and be that father figure for me. And so we got married, and because we didn't know each other very long, the first year we fought like cats and dogs. I mean, like, we hated each other, and we tried to go to church. We tried to make everything work, but again, it was us trying. It wasn't God doing the work. We had several people counsel us, and before we got married, and say, don't get married. We had several people, when we got married, try to help us make it work. But, being out of God's will is hard, and it wasn't something that we were going to be able to make work. We were going to have to turn it over to God, and we weren't ready yet. And, anyway, I was still so miserable. Not because I wasn't saved or lost, miserable like I was before I'd met God, but miserable because I felt like I was still missing that love, and I wasn't allowing God to love me, and to fulfill me first. And I just jumped in head first with some guy that I didn't even know, and I was trying to make it work, and we couldn't. So we separated, even drew up the divorce papers, and this was going to be it. I was 19, going to be divorced, or I may have been 20 at the time. And, I thought, oh, great, here my life is over, and church didn't really work well after all, and I tried, I guess, to reject God. While we were separated, we never signed the divorce papers. I did draw them up, but we never signed them. We were separated, so I reasoned with myself, what? We can see other people. So I started doing that. And I even moved away to a different state. I was 5 months pregnant at the time with my son. And it was just a mess, because hopefully we can keep connection. Somebody pray. And I'll try to wrap this up too. But anyway, we got back together, and, it took us a very, very long time to work things out. And we did both start going back to church, and we were members of several different churches because we had to move a lot because of being in the military. But God really started to work in our lives. And here we are almost 17 years later with 4 beautiful kids, and members of a wonderful church. And I'm still saved and know it, but, I really believe that being in the will of God has made all the difference. I know what it's like not to be in the will of God. I know what it's like to struggle, to believe that you could take care of things for yourself, to feel like there's still something missing even after being a saved person. But God has never left me, even though when I was running from him, I tried to reject him. He was still always there. He was a still small voice in my head, convicting me of me being wrong. And he has always been there to chasten me, to love me. And now, after I finally allowed him to be my everything, my first love, then I was able to love my husband more. He was able to love me. And, I just give all the glory to God. And I don't know what part of my testimony was missed because of the poor connection, but, I guess this is why I wanted to give the testimony. If you're watching and you take away anything as a lost person, I want you to know that no matter what you try to fill your needs, to find love, to anything outside of God, whatever you're trying to do is not going to work. And the answer that you're looking for is in Jesus Christ. The hope that I have living inside of me, the thing that has brought me through all of these hard times, the thing that gives me the peace that passes all understanding, has been getting saved and having Jesus Christ in my life. And if you're lost and you're looking for some kind of hope, you're never going to find it in the world. The only place that you're going to find it is in God. And going to church isn't going to do it. Even if you're saved and trying to live the Christian life, if you're doing that without God, you're spinning your wheels, and God's not going to bless it. And until you turn your life over to Him, you're going to struggle. God didn't intend for you to live this life on your own. He intended to live it through you. And if you're miserable, it's probably because you're trying to do it and not allowing God to do it. So, in times like these, we all need some hope. And the only hope that can be found is in Jesus. And if you haven't found that hope, then I encourage you to keep asking questions, to keep going to church, to find somebody that will give you the scriptures out of the Bible, to witness to you. Like my coworker, she was so consistent in witnessing to me and persistent. She wouldn't give up, and she always prayed for me. There's somebody out there that is willing to be there for you, to pray for you, to show you the truth, to show you what God wants for your life. And if you're saved and out of the will of God, it's never too late to repent and come back to Him. I wouldn't want to live this life without Him, and everything that I have is because of Him. And if you don't have Him, then I'd suggest that you find Him. And if you do have Him and you haven't been putting Him first, in your life, if He's not your first love, then I'd suggest definitely remedying that. So anyway, I thank everybody for coming on here tonight, and it was good to finally tell my testimony. I know a lot of times in church I don't say much, but I don't want to glorify sin. And sometimes I think we use that as a cop-out, like, okay, I don't want to tell people about my past because they're going to think differently of me. But sometimes people need to know that, you've struggled too, that you can understand them. And if you're out there listening and you're needing someone to understand, I promise you, I can probably understand where you're coming from. And if not, I can definitely pray for you. So anyway, I love you all. And thank you for praying for me today. And I hope that nothing was said that God didn't want said. And I hope this helps someone. So anyway, that's all I had. You guys have a great night. Bye.